And when it leaves that region, it comes back to this side. It fills the rivers there. And so he has a whole flowing going all over, see. Some flow in one side from which they flow out, and others the opposite side. Some pass completely around in a circle, coiling about the earth once or several times like serpents, then descend to the lowest possible depth and fall again into the chasm. Now, it's possible to go down from each side of the center, but not beyond. And it's possible to go down both sides, just like in Kundalini Yoga. And then he mentions in this structure these lakes and these rivers. And therefore, you know what? Could it be possible that the way in which they're describing them are these intense states that are experienced in this strange game called yoga and Kundalini Yoga? I wanted to share that with you, just to show you that there may be a way of doing it. Now, the way best to do it would be to bring someone who's practiced these kinds of breathing exercises, see whether we could get them to describe it, see whether or not they can talk about the different centers that it opens up, and whether or not some are dangerous and some are full of fire and some are full of heat, because those are the very words and the language they use in Kundalini Yoga. If so, then, Plato then is expressing a kind of interesting yoga, the separation of the soul from the body, and in that process, the person itself goes through these different states of mind, which can be represented in this way. And if so, there's a very interesting relationship between Plato's use of mythology and the way it can then be represented in the psychic experiences of man, as against the shamanistic practices which go all the way to India and all the way up to Siberia. So let me conclude by giving you just one section where he does a beautiful job, and he talks very much like what's sacred to Apollo. Now, I said that in the beginning, and let me just fill in a little few things about Apollo. Of course, Apollo declares the will of Zeus to all men, the unfailing will of Zeus to mankind. All right? He represents, ideally, the Hellenic spirit. He's the god of light. And later, in the course of Apollo's history, in mythology, he's identified with the sun, of course. All right? Source of inspiration. And he does for the soul what light does for the world, what the sun and the light do for the world. He's the Lord of music and song, of prophecy, healer. He pronounces natural law, nurtures law. He uncults high moral and religious principles. He's a purifier and patron of the religious spirit of Delos. His key expression, of course, is to know thyself. And yet, for all of that, he's strange. So I just read one section of the middle of the Phaedo, which is at 85. He likens himself. Ah, Simmias, he says, I should have had hard work to persuade other people that I do not regard my present situation as a misfortune, when I cannot even make you believe it. But you are afraid I am more churlish now than I used to be. And you seem to think I'm inferior in prophetic power to the swans. Swans were the favorite, of course, to Apollo, who sing at other times also, but when they feel that they are to die, they sing the most and the best in their joy that they are to go to the God whose servants they are. But men, because of their own fear of death, misrepresent the swans and say they sing for sorrow, in mourning for their own death. That's not the case. They do not consider that no bird sings when it's hungry or cold or has any other trouble, not even the nightingale or the swallow. I do not believe they sing for grief, nor do the swans. But since they are Apollo's birds, I believe they have prophetic vision. And because they have foreknowledge of the blessings in the other world, they sing and they rejoice on that day more than ever before. And I think I am myself a fellow servant of the swans, and I'm consecrated to the same God, Apollo, and have received from our master a gift of prophecy no whit inferior to theirs, and that I go out from life with as little sorrow as they. So he therefore sees himself as in the very guise and having some of the very same powers that befit a representative of Apollo. So that's what I wanted to take you through today. How to look at the Phaedo or Plato through mythology. Thank you for coming. Any questions we can play with?
Did the Neoplatonists later on, like Proclus, ever revise the idea of the lakes, like deleting from their philosophy the concept of Titaris? The reason I ask that is I find it very difficult to accept that however bad a person is, like a Hitler or a Nero, nevertheless, that person, however bad a person is, that person's soul is going to be lost forever.
Yeah.
I find that very,
yes.
hard to accept.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, many people do.
Yeah,
oh yeah. And there's
if
some...
anything, you should I mean, people like that
yeah.
need a great learning.
Yeah. It would be nice to have a round table discussion with Stalin, Hitler, right, up there in the other world, and say, okay, gentlemen, what did you learn from this last experience? And let's take a look at it.
I'll mention that next time I talk to Steve Allen. A meeting of the minds of those people.
Pardon?
You have a meeting of the minds.
Yeah.
Like that show he had.
Oh, good. Yeah, I think it would be interesting dialogue, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Right, we can put a couple of other names, right? Pol Pot, Mao Zedong, right. I mean, not Mao Zedong.
But even
Mao.
I find it hard to believe that even they are lost forever. I really do.
They all thought they were doing good.
Yeah, that's
I think
it.
Pol Pot thought he was doing good.
I don't.
I think Hitler thought he was saving humanity.
I don't think there's any doubt, is there? I mean, they were certainly motivated by what they thought was good.
Read parts of Mein Kampf, he was trying to save the world from these horrible things that were polluting the world.
Yeah, in fact, if you read Das Kapital, the way he depicts industrial conditions for the worker in those days is staggering. Yeah. Oh, yeah, very terrible. Yeah, it's a whole litany of crimes. Yeah, I tend to agree with you, by the way. Yeah.
That was an interesting point you brought up, because granted, these people were, even though Proclus and the others don't use the word evil, for our purposes I'll use evil, the word evil. They were evil, but you're right, evil people don't see themselves.
You know, the way we're talking about them the way we are is because they lost the war and we're writing the history. Now, if the Nazis had lost the war, we'd have a picture of him right up there.
You mean Nazis
Hitler.
who won the war?
Oh, sure.
I mean,
right,
Nazis that won the war.
we'd have
We'd have a picture of
right.
Hitler over here, and we'd be talking about the good things he did, and we wouldn't even consider the Holocaust because nobody would be thinking about that as a bad thing. That would be just a casualty of war.
Or he'd have to build more of them.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It would take a step, it would take his philosophy even further.
Yes.
That's what we would do.
Yeah. And certainly history
And
is
he would
full
call
of...
and he would call it good.
Oh, he would.
He did.
Oh, did? Oh, yeah. Matter of
Yeah,
fact, he
right.
thought the German people failed him. Yeah, he said, I didn't. I'm all right. You guys failed me. Yeah.
That'd make an interesting novel if Hitler had won the war.
Oh, they made, they have,
I don't think it has.
If Martin Luther